Without further ado, we're bringing the great Mark Mitchell in from Rasmussen. This guy is so friggin' handsome that we couldn't put him on camera today because he was breaking the camera. Instead, we got him on the phone, and we want to go right into charts. So give me that first chart, Denver, that we got that shows the nice little, yeah, that's the one. Okay, Mark, so we got your first chart on. You do a nightly poll. Yeah, you do a nightly poll. And what's curious about the nightly poll is that if you look at the blue line, I'll explain. There was a brief shining moment where Kamala crossed over and was leading, but now what do we see? This is go ahead.
That's what everybody's calling Kamala momentum, and it didn't last too long in our numbers. And I think the reason this chart's important is because I'm the only one putting it out. So I think this is maximum transparency. And the narrative in the media that's being shaped about Kamala Harris's polling is that it keeps getting better and better. But if you look at the blue line, she basically shot up to 45 and has sat there between 44 and 45 the whole time in my numbers. Now, what's different about me and everybody else is that I didn't change anything. And I think what's probably happening in some of these push polls that are coming out from New York Times, Siena, and ABC News and all these other folks, ABC News, the people, by the way, who owned 538 and kicked us out of the aggregate and now have Harris up 4 nationally. What's happening is I think that they're selectively changing their methodology. New York Times, Siena actually came out about it this weekend and admitted basically that, yes, we think we're oversampling Biden supporters, but we are not using the 2020 recalled vote to correct for it. Well, I am. And I'm not oversampling Biden. So I'm basically trying to match what I think an accurate picture of the electorate is. And you could say, well, maybe you're a little too right or by a point or two, or maybe I think we were left in 2020. But if you take that red line and move it up or down a point or two, the story still remains. Kamala Harris's numbers are going sideways. That's the story.
All right, before we get into the battleground states, I just want to have you repeat. So for people who are consumers of polling data, there's 2 main aggregators. There's the Real Clear Politics one, which updates every day depending on new polls. And there's this thing called 538. I strongly prefer Real Clear Politics as the one you probably want to watch. Who owns 538 and why do we have to be a little or a lot wary of what we see there? You just said somebody owns it. It's one of the polls.
Yeah. 538 is owned by ABC News, which rolls up to Disney. It was founded by Nate Silver, and regardless of what you think about him, they got rid of Nate Silver and brought in a new guy who, in our opinion, is a bit of an ideologue. But what Real Clear Politics is, and we know the founders, they're just straight shooters. You can think of them like a menu of polling. It's a straight average, and they link you to the crosstabs, and they have standards about what polls they put on there or not. 538 is a black box prediction model that exists to drive narratives. Totally different story. And I've personally seen them do some pretty underhanded stuff. And in my opinion, they kicked us out, quite frankly, I think reason numero uno. And the last time I called into your show without video was the weekend last year where they were threatening to drop us because we go on War Room to discuss our polling. That was the number one issue they had with us. So they're clearly ideologues.
Then let's really piss them off right now and go to the next slide, right? We got the battleground states. I'm looking at Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I'm looking at a column that says 2-way and another one 6-way. Tell us what we're seeing here.
All right, this is a quick summary of this latest swing state set of polls we did. We did one in July. We did one basically last week up until yesterday. And we're dropping these all on our website. The crosstabs in a day or two, I think, are going to be available for everybody to look at. And we went into these 5 states. The polls are all really big. They're likely voter polls, which sets us apart from most other pollsters. And what you're seeing here, the 2-way is just, Harris or Trump. The 6-way is including all the third-party characters. And I think the headline takeaway here is that Trump is roughly tied within the margin of error in every single one of these. Obviously, Harris is doing a little bit better in Michigan. Trump's doing better in Arizona and Nevada, basically tied in Pennsylvania, but all within the margin of error. Now, I will say, if people saw our July numbers, these are tighter and not as good for Trump. And what I would say to that is that we sampled. I mean, a lot of this polling was still being done during the DNC and all of the positive press. I mean, a lot of these numbers were collected even before she started dropping her communist economic policies. And so my theory is I think that her support is going to wither away as she's exposed to more scrutiny. And what we may be seeing here is her top tick. Maybe not, but that's what I think might happen. But the right column, to me...
Go ahead. Do the rights column. Go ahead.
So this is the 2020 change from our polling. Everybody asks me, how come your polling shows Trump doing so well at a national level, but then how come the swing states are so close like this? And what I would say is our polling showed that Trump was nowhere close in the swing states. Everybody calls us a right-wing pollster, but we showed Trump down, 5 to 8 points in most of the battlegrounds 4 years ago. And so he's doing better 6 or 7 points than he was in our polling. That's a massive pickup, and it matches, in my opinion, the amount that he's doing better in the Real Clear Politics national aggregate as well. So I think the right answer here...
That wasn't a change in any methodology. You're using the same methodology.
Yeah, no, there's no big changes here. We actually, maybe a point of a weighting change difference, but a lot's happened, and he's changed a lot of minds. Now, I'd also point out that it shows that he's doing a point worse in Arizona than he was 4 years ago. I don't know. I think I got a pretty left sample in Arizona that didn't fully get weighted out. Because the last couple times we've done Arizona this year, we've had Trump up like 5 to 9 points. So I wouldn't be worried about that D+1.
All right. Well, let's go. Let's put the next slide up here for Arizona. And Denver, if you can get the next slide, it says Arizona. Let's go through this. So the two-way, again, Trump's up 2. 6-way, Trump's up 1. Kerry Lake is way down, and the generic ballot, the Republicans are up a little bit more than Trump's up. So walk us through what you're seeing there, and if any thoughts on what the issues are that are driving stuff.
So this is a pretty big likely voter poll, and I think you're going to start to see the same kind of pattern here, is that regardless of where Trump and Harris are at, in all these battleground states, the Republican challenger is losing quite a bit. Now, some of them are a little bit better, and I was surprised at how they shook out. But this is the worst Kerry Lake's done in our polling. And again, I don't know if it's this one particular sample. Last time we had Kerry Lake down 3 points. And then the generic ballot, the Republicans seem to be doing pretty well. If that number holds up, it'll spell the same kind of pickup. Maybe a little bit better than in 2022. The other thing I want to call out on this slide is this sponsored by Numbers USA, which is a really great nonpartisan immigration organization, and they sponsor this poll. They're going to be the reasons people will be able to go read all the crosstabs. And it's a very rich issue-based poll that focused on why people are voting, but it also gets into specifically the issue of illegal immigration. Lots of really great questions in there, but I think for me the biggest takeaway is despite all that, despite the fact that by a 2-to-1 margin, voters think the issue at the southern border is a crisis, strong majority, roughly 60% of people, depending on the state, think that Biden purposely is ushering people across. Despite all that, economy is by far still the biggest issue in voters' minds, even more so than in July.
And Mark, do you distinguish when you do the economy from inflation? I mean, or is it inflation driven, or is it deeper than that?
Well, we have two different sets, which is in this one, which is something we don't always do because we don't have the room. And I'm looking here specifically at just Nevada because I pulled it up. Which stack rank the issues, which one's most important. 38% say economy, only 16% say border security is really low, lower than, in my opinion, it's been in a long time for a border state. And then, abortion's third at 12%. That's among all likely voters. But then we individually asked, how important is this issue when determining who to vote for? Yeah. And, everybody says all the issues are important, but you can kind of compare. And we did inflation and an economy separately. Before, I'd say when we did this, inflation was number one. It's less so, and I think inflation has slowed down a little bit. Yeah. But here, 71% of Nevada voters say economy is very important. Only 63% say inflation is very important. Abortion, 48, the lowest of the six we asked. But this one was fascinating, though. Legal immigration, again, this is Nevada. Only 55% say very important, only slightly more than abortion. And government corruption was a standout at 68%. So it's kind of weird. Everybody doesn't like the illegal immigration, but it's just not it's not getting the share of wallet right now, if you know what I mean.
Okay, I get it. All right, let's go. Let's start with Michigan. We got about 60 seconds left, and then we'll come back after the break. But let's do the top line. Let's get the chart up there, Denver. Michigan, I'm reading Harris has a 1-point lead in the two-way, a 3-point lead in the six-way, and the Democrat Slotkin has a 2-point lead over Rogers. The generic Democrats have a 4-point lead. So what is going on in Michigan that makes it a little bit more Democrat-friendly than Pennsylvania and Wisconsin?
Well, I think farther from the border helps, and Michigan's got Detroit. That's always a unique situation. But I think, again, it's just the same trend we've seen in the other ones, which is that it's about 2 points left of where it was for us in July. I think we had Trump up one in the two-way and down one in the six-way. And again, maybe this is Kamala Harris's top tick, but I think the economic message is probably going to play pretty well there. And, again, it's within the margin of error. Rogers is doing a lot better than the other senators, and he's doing better than Republicans, which is pretty crazy. That's kind of unique in this particular state. But, again, we're looking at numbers that are 6 points better, 7 points better than where we had Trump 4 years ago. And he did way better in our polling, but, I don't want to be accused of leaning right here. And I'll just tell you, the headline to me is
hang
that,
on, Mark.
okay.
Mark, we got, I got to go right to break right now, hard break. We are with Mark Mitchell with breaking polling results from Rasmussen. Let's get the Michigan slide back up. I want to see where we got. That one's a problem. Trump is down slightly in Michigan. The question I had for Mark is, do you, when you're doing different states, do different issues? Like in Michigan, this whole EV thing, the electric vehicle thing, is going to destroy the auto industry in Michigan. Do you pick any of that kind of up, or is it more like one size fits all when you do these battlegrounds?
I had to do this one size fits all. There's a specific reason we deep dived illegal immigration. And I think there are probably single line hot button issues like fracking in Pennsylvania that would evoke people's ire. But I think, in my opinion, it all basically comes back to economy. And believe it or not, on the border, the people in Michigan weren't that much different than the people in Arizona and Nevada. I was just saying before the break, the biggest takeaway to me, though, is that Michigan's 2 points left of where it was in our July polling. But in between these two polls, Trump was shot. He picked the vice president. He had an RNC. Joe Biden resigned. They anointed Kamala Harris. She picked a VP. She got endorsed by Obama, and they had a DNC. And she's basically doing 2 points better. It's not even a full 2 points in Michigan. Yeah. So, again,
50-50 country, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get Montana up. Montana is the only thing I want to point out in Montana is the fact that Mark The Senate's tied now, right? It's 50-50. Is that
Yeah.
and there's like how many seats? This one actually looks like we could pick up this seat. Sheehy's beaten Tester, who's a truly vile individual, by a full 7 points. How many seats? Could we lose any that we have now? And how many might we pick up? What's your sense of your polling at this point?
I don't think this is a tough one for me to answer because I think what we're seeing here is probably the result of very targeted negative advertising in each of these battleground states in a way that's probably not playing out nationally. And I think every single one of these Senate seats is not a Republican. I don't think there are any Republican incumbents here. And the Republican candidates are underperforming Trump and the generic ballot. And so I would ask I would ask the party establishment people, like, what's happening here? What's your strategy? Something has to happen. You know, Sheehy looks like he's doing great, but he's trailing Trump in a six-way by 20 points. Like, that's incredible. Why? Right?
That is incredible. I buried the lead on that. Look at that. Trump's up 23 in Montana, and she's only up +7.
Yeah.
All right, let's flag that. Maybe in a week or so you come back and
It's not like he's a moderate Democrat. Like we asked about his Numbers USA immigration grade. It's like an F. And when you tell voters that, they're like, oh, maybe I'll support him less. But
all right, let's go to Nevada, Denver, and we got the two-way Trump's +2, six-way Trump's +2. The generic ballot Republicans are up +3, and here again we have a situation where the Senate Republican candidate is down friggin' 11. Is Rosen an incumbent? I should know that, but I don't.
I don't know off the top of my head either. I'll tell you what, though, that 11 makes me feel like a CBS pollster. And this is way worse than our 2022 polling showed
That's funny.
Laxalt doing. So,
that's funny. Inside joke. I hope everybody in the posse got that. Yeah. Okay, so memo to the Senate. Who's ever running the Republican Senate campaign right now, you're fired. you're fired, dude, because you are making a friggin' mess of the Senate. And if we allow Waltz to be the VP who's going to break ties again like that, God help us. All right, let's go to Ohio. No, let's skip Ohio.
There's reasons we did these other states. Nobody thinks Ohio's a battleground. This is a very solid Trump win. I think we had Trump up 3 or 4 points in our polling, and he wound up doing +8 in Ohio. Now we have him up +8.
But again, Sherrod Brown, the Democrat, is up by 5 on Moreno. This can't. I mean. Let's figure this one out the next time. All right, Pennsylvania. This is my golem, as it were, if you understand the reference. Trump up 1 in the two-way, down in the 1 in the six-way. The generic is up 1 Democrat. What's going on in Pennsylvania of note that you're seeing in your polling? What's the Pennsylvania story? How does Trump win Pennsylvania? What's the message?
I think the energy. First off, I think this is only a point worse for Trump than the last time we went out. These are good numbers. He's tied in Pennsylvania. We had him down 5 points in a poll 4 years ago. He's doing really well. McCormick's doing better than the candidate from 2022. I forget his name off the top of my head. And generic ballot, Mastriano. And generic ballot is pretty good for Pennsylvania. I think what we're going to see is this is going to tick closer right as the Kamala Harris glow wears off. And, we have a lot of signs that the economy is going to play well. I think the energy policy, Trump's going to play well. Lots of people want to see drilling. We've asked questions about, specifically in Pennsylvania, would you support a law to massively increase, drilling for oil? And the numbers, like 63%, I think it was, at least some would support that. So I think when the narratives break through after the convention period sort of wears off. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with the debates, but ostensibly some debate should happen, and ostensibly Harris is going to release more policy positions that are going to get picked apart. Even some of the people in the left-wing media were doing that. I don't know. I think it's like with Pennsylvania this close.
What freaks me out about Pennsylvania is that early voting starts on September 16th. I mean, well, what is going on in this country? We're supposed to have an election in November, and you got like this 2-month rolling time where people are voting, and by the time of the second debate, like half the people in Pennsylvania may have voted. I mean, what? Yeah. How do you account for that in polling?
Well, the one thing I will say, that's 3 weeks from now, and that's a million years in this election cycle. We could have another assassination attempt. We could have stuff happen with Trump's criminal convictions.
I know, but my point is, let's suppose you come up with a poll on October 10th, right, for Pennsylvania, and you look at this, and like it turns out that there's been a significant increase for Trump support, hypothetically.
Yep.
But half the people have already voted, so it doesn't. That? I mean, that's from a pollster's point of view. I'm asking you, how big a problem does that present for you when you're doing your polls and you come out and you have your like day before game day in November, and you get your ass kicked because everybody already voted and your poll was wrong? I mean, talk to me about how you think about that.
I care less and less about that, because what I've noticed is that when we release like a weekly poll, we were doing it with generic ballot, we're doing it here, the numbers do swing. And I think before, 10, 20 years ago, we'd be worried about things like a sudden release of information about Swift boats, right, in military service, or Hillary Clinton emails. And if you look at our polling back then, there really was this sort of neck and neck swing back and forth as new information came to light. But they were both like, there was no incumbency there. And basically the two candidates here are incumbents, and everybody knows them. And not only that, they've rallied behind their candidate pick almost like some kind of political Armageddon. And so, again, with just in the last month and a half, with everything that's happened, it barely moved our numbers. And I think it's just going to be a grind out to Election Day. And I don't think there's going to be much in the way of any swings unless some black swan happens. I mean, like, what could possibly happen? Maybe a war, maybe a financial market reckoning, maybe some kind of emperor with no clothes moment for Kamala Harris. They're probably going to be pretty successful at preventing that. Maybe Trump goes to jail, but it's like, what else is really going to move the numbers outside of like 2 or 3 points maximum? And you come back to the fact that not just in our numbers, but in the Real Clear Politics aggregate, Trump is doing 7 points better than he was doing 4 years ago, because the polling industry overstates Democrat support, period. They were doing it then, they're going to do it again, and we don't. We actually did overstate Democrat support in 2020 slightly, but we think we were accurate, and our numbers showed a big swing for Trump. And everybody's got to watch the swing states. Trump's got to have his machine. He's got to get out the vote. He's got to spend money there too. I guess the senatorial Republicans got to get some money involved also. I'm not exactly sure.
All right, hang on, hold that thought. We're going to come back. Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen. We are finishing up the state of Pennsylvania. You're going to use the last one. I think we got that one covered. Let's pull up Wisconsin. But before we go there, Mark, Waltz versus Vance, does it matter, particularly in the battlegrounds?
I mean, nobody
Nothing.
really cared who the vice presidential picks were. And I think each of them probably got met with a raised eyebrow. But we asked Vance and Walt's favorability in every single one of the states. They were all kind of the same, and they were all kind of, there was like 10 to 15% not sure, a little bit more not sure for Waltz, and everybody was basically split to underwater by 5 to 10 points.
I thought I was seeing JD's unfavorables higher than Waltz. Am I wrong?
Yeah, but I think like some of that's because Waltz is a little lesser known. So he has less very favorable and less very unfavorable.
Tell me, is Waltz, let's see, is he less favorable in his home state than he is, for example, in Wisconsin? Because nobody knows who he is in Wisconsin. Do you have the numbers there?
I don't have Minnesota numbers. We're not going to be going in there this cycle, probably.
All right, let's go to Wisconsin then. I got Harris up 1 in the 2-way, Trump tied in the 6-way. Yet again, the Democrat Senate candidate is getting ass kicked, but the generic ballot is +1 for the Democrats. So this one's tight. What's your read on this one?
Trump's doing well here. 7 points better than 4 years ago, sticking in there with essentially a statistical tie. This is positive news for Trump territory, but Eric Hoppy's just getting wrecked again. And I don't know, who's the PAC that's spending the most on Republican races this year. I don't know the answer to that. I looked at the Senate Leadership Fund, their news page. The latest article is 2022, right? Where's Mitch McConnell spending his time and his money?
All right, so I want to put out a little urgent 911 call right here from the War Room to one of my absolute favorite senators, and that's Rick Scott of Florida. Rick, if you want to be the Senate Majority Leader, which I would strongly support, you can't do that unless we win the Senate. And I'm looking at these numbers, and except in Montana, we're getting our ass kicked by incomprehensible double digits in the Senate races. I mean, it's like, what's going on, Rick? So please, and MSNBC, CNN, Fox, whoever, say, give me a headline on this. Navarro blasts the Senate Republicans for laying down on the job. Maybe they're trying to sandbag Trump because they don't actually want power. Who knows? But this is like friggin' stupid. And is it because Mitch McConnell is on life support and it's his last screw job of Donald Trump, even though he says he supports him now? Something's going on here. All right. I think we got a pretty good picture here. Let's have your final thoughts, Mark, on where you think things may go. Is Kamala Harris going to get one more little big bump from what's going on with her joyful policy light DNC, or what? Last words from Mark Mitchell.
I suspect we've seen the biggest Kamala Harris bump that we're going to see. That's just my thoughts. I haven't seen any major headlines out of here, and I think probably most of the people watching, their Democrats are preaching to the choir on this. I think it's still a millennium until the election, and a lot of stuff could happen. I think at some point people are going to want to see substance. I think at some point there's probably going to be mistakes she makes that they don't have the media unity to paper over, let's just say. I think, again, I don't know what the debate picture is going to look like after the September 4th decision, so we'll just have to wait and see. But she's going to have to get up and talk at some point, and this is, Trump is basically tied in the battlegrounds.
Here's the crosstab I want to see from you, Mark.
Yeah.
You've got roughly 8% that's undecided in most of these races. 7, 8, 9, 6, whatever it is. So with that sliver of the electorate, if you cross-tab it on the issues, are they different in any way? Or are they the same? Meaning that is economy number one, border number two, I forget the third, abortion number four. What are the four biggest issues, and do these undecideds look different in any way in these battleground states?
I pulled one up randomly. I'm just looking at Ohio, and these people who aren't sure about who they're going to vote for, their biggest issue is by far the economy. Everything else doesn't even get to.
Can you pull that up for Michigan, real quick in real time? And I can, as you're doing that, let me just say that the biggest challenge right now for both of the campaigns is to try to figure out how to target the undecideds when they're like needle in a haystack types. I mean, I don't know many elections, and Mark may have a thought on this, where you have such a small number of undecideds. I think it's virtually unprecedented in American politics, where before Labor Day, over 90% of the people's minds are made up. So you're going to spend a tremendous amount of money in 5 or 6 states trying to move, I don't know, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 voters. I mean, it's going to be a real challenge. Mark, did you find anything there?
Well, I had Wisconsin up, so I took a look at that, and I'm looking at the not sures in the two-way, and I'm telling you, actually for them, it's border first, then economy. It's not single-issue abortion people. It's not Ukraine enjoyers. It's not anything like that. It's issues that are squarely in the Republican wheelhouse. I think a lot of these people will probably wind up not voting anyway.
What's after economy and border? What's after the economy and border?
For these people, violent crime. So,
crime.
Again, right? Like these are gimmies. And maybe these people lied to me in the likely voter screen, and they're not going to vote anyways. Or maybe these are solid pickups. I'll tell you, the easiest low-hanging fruit is probably the RFK voters, which could give Trump a solid point or two in all of these races. And we'll have to see how that plays out.
It's pretty clear that with Kamala in the race now instead of Biden, that RFK at the margin hurts Trump a little bit more. That's a takeaway. So again, Brother Bobby, let's have this talk. And let the great Mark Mitchell get back to renovating his house, because the next time we see him, he'll have a internet connect. Mark, you're great today. I so much appreciate it, and we'll get you back in a week or two, or whenever you have fresh results you want to share with the room.
Yep, we'll do.
All right, my brother. Take care, man. Great job.